concerned about weight is one of the main questions, is why do we even focus on weight? It seems that historically, weight has always been from an aesthetic point of view. You know, people are always concerned about weight from how they look. And that seems to be the driving force and the thing that moves people forward. But the way that I want you to think about it is, how does the weight that you put on impact on your health? And then think about, what can we do from a healthy eating point of view and from an exercise point of view? So not from a weight loss point of view, but what about the behaviors that we do on a daily basis that ultimately end up at a healthy weight without focusing on weight? And then lastly, hopefully pulling it all together so that you can set yourself up for success, because that's really what it's about. Is just, I call healthy living just a journey, and it's as you move through your life, it's just a journey of continually asking yourself, where am I? Can I continue to build on what I'm doing in order to move towards health, okay? So when we look at obesity, and that's just the term that is used for weight, and I'll go into it in a minute and how we look and how we classify it, but we look at obesity as from a weight perspective, but I look at it from a health perspective. If you go and see your family physician today, physicians and other healthcare providers really don't address weight as a risk factor, okay? So when you think of weight, we know that if you have added weight, it impacts on your heart health, it impacts on your blood pressure, it impacts on that you could go on to develop diabetes, sleep apnea, and the list could go on, right? So that's the obesity. For you in this room, you've all been diagnosed with acromegaly, and you know that those health risks are very similar to what you see in obesity, right? So if you get diagnosed with acromegaly, you are at an increased risk for heart disease. You are at an increased risk for diabetes and sleep apnea and so on, right? So the message that I want you to think about is, even though you have acromegaly, you cannot dismiss the added risk by weight that goes on, okay? So acromegaly puts you at increased risk. Having added weight also puts you at an additional increased risk, okay? So more important for you to understand what a healthy weight is. So when I talk about healthy weight, you really have to understand when you go into see a health professional, your physician, and they look at you, and if you were to say, you know, doctor, am I at a healthy weight? We use BMI, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with BMI, which is your body mass index. Are you familiar with that? And really what that tool is we're looking at your weight in relation to your height. And from that, we get a number. So we take your weight and divide it by your height in meters squared, and we get a number. If you were 25, you were in 25, between 20 and 25, you were in a healthy weight. From 25 to 29, you were at an increased risk for health. 29.9 and up, you're considered obese. And then it goes into classifications of obese 1, obese 2, and obese 3. As the weight goes up, so does your increased risk for health, okay? That's just one thing that we use to assess where you are in terms of health. The other one that we use is your waist circumference, okay? The reason we use that one is because somebody can get on a scale and their body BMI could be in a normal range, meaning that they could be a 24.5. And the doctor says, okay, you're in a healthy weight range. But we also know that if most of the weight is around the abdominal area, that you're also at an increased risk for health, okay? So what we do is we measure your waist circumference, and it's not where you wear your pants, it's the biggest point. And the way that I explain to people how we measure that is we take the top of the iliac crest, and you take a couple inches up from that. It's usually around the top of the navel, okay? It's a good measure for you if you were going to measure yourself. And I'll give you guys some measuring tapes so that you can maybe do that yourself and keep track of that, because it's a really important measure to use, all right? But if that, for women, if you're greater than 88 centimeters or 35 inches, you're at increased risk for health. For men, it's 40 inches. You're at an increased risk for health, or 102 centimeters, okay? So when you look at those two things, I want you to think they're just tools. They're just something that we use for me. If you were to come and see me, that I would say, you know what? You're at an increased risk for developing health conditions. So that let's have a look at what you're doing and see if maybe we can reduce that risk. We know that if you're able to look at what you're doing from a healthy eating perspective, you can help reduce your risk. One of the tools that we used to assess whether or not you're getting enough nutrition is the Canada's Food Guide. And I know that was one of the questions when we decided that we would do this talk. Somebody had emailed in a question that they really wanted to understand Canada's Food Guide. And you know, it is a question that is often mentioned to me. If I have somebody who sits in front of me and they'll say, oh, please don't give me Canada's Food Guide, it really doesn't do anything for me, then I explain to them that they really don't understand what it is. First of all, you have to understand that it is a guide, and it's a guide to ensure that you're getting the nutrition that you need without having to have me on your shoulder, all right? So if you think about it, if you're following the guidelines that I say, then you can say to yourself pretty confidently that you're getting the nutrition that you need, okay? So the way that I explain it to people is Canada's Food Guide. It's changed over the years. Before we just had a one-pager and we looked at different portions and things. But when you're looking at it, you'll notice that it's been divided up through the life cycle. The majority of the people that are in this room right now would fit in to the 19 to 50 group or the 50+ group. And it's also been broken down into gender, meaning male and female, because male and females have different nutritional needs, right? So when we look at the fruits and vegetables, what kind of nutrients come to mind? What kind of things would come into your head that you would think would be in fruits and vegetables? Beta carotene, vitamin C, antioxidants, right? Those antioxidants are really important for heart health. Vitamin A, vitamin C are also really important for tissue building. So your body's continually breaking down and rebuilding. So it's really important that you have those. Your immune system. So when you look at your fruits and vegetables, there's specific nutrients that are in there that are important for health. When we look at trying to bring it into our diet, when you're thinking about a portion size, what I really want you to think about is half a cup, or for a piece of fruit, the size of a tennis ball. Okay? That's one serving. That doesn't mean that's how much you're going to eat, and I think that's where the misconception gets with people is they go, I can't eat just 1/2 cup of vegetables or 1/2 or one small fruit. It's very individualized, and that's what I meant by the guide, okay? So thinking when you get to your fruits and vegetables, I want you thinking 1/2 cup, whether it's berries or whether it's a vegetable, all right? When you're thinking, when you want to put it into a visual, think about the size of a tennis ball, fitting into the small of your hand. So for example, you know the big fruit you get in the grocery stores today, that's actually 2 fruit when you compare it to the size, right? So it's just putting it into perspective and understanding how many portions a day that you're getting. If you look at the Canada's Food Guide, it says 7 servings a day on average. It goes up from that, can go 7 to 10, and that's going to depend on how physically active and where you are as well in your life of what you need. But 7 on average, does that sound like a lot? It does sound like a lot, doesn't it? And it tends to be, the fruits and vegetables tends to be the group that is lacking in the majority of Canadian diets, all right? So let's look at it for a minute. A large apple is 2. You have that in the morning for breakfast. At lunchtime, maybe you're gonna have a piece of fruit and some carrot sticks. You've got another 2. At supper time, you're gonna have maybe a cup of carrots and a cup of peas. There's another 4. There's your 7. So it really doesn't take too much. It's just a matter of thinking about it and how you're going to include it. And also asking yourself, why? What's the importance? And I want you to think back, because then you know you got the nutrition that you need from those specific food groups or foods, okay? What about grains? What are the nutrients that come to mind with grains? That's a tough one, eh? Do you remember that old commercial where they talked about the gymnasium? So thiamine, riboflavin, those B vitamins, they're all B vitamins. So the grain products also have carbohydrates. It's the carbohydrates that have gotten the bad name lately, haven't they, in the news? And they get the bad name because they're very high in energy. It's the B vitamins that help you use the energy. So it makes sense that the B vitamins would be there. The thing that about the carbohydrate or the grain foods is that we tend to overportion in them. Okay? It's not me teaching portion size. It's like when you go out to a restaurant and you get your big heaping fries. They're the ones that are teaching portion size, and they're also giving you way over than what you need. Okay? So when you think of a portion size, what do you think a portion size is for the grains? Half cup?
Cheerios.
A bowl of Cheerios. That's a really good point. So let's think of a bowl, and this puts it into perspective of portion size, and I'm going to talk about portion sizes in a minute, but a bowl. Is it a bowl or a bowl? And you know how big our dishes are today. From when I was a kid, this is what I had, and they're much far bigger than this now, aren't they? So it can be a little bit deceiving. When you think you're having a bowl, you could actually be having 4 grain servings for breakfast. Okay, so a serving, if you keep it again into a half cup serving, right? And you have 2 cups of cereal, you've actually got yourself 4 servings. All right, so I want you to think I want you to think half cup again for serving. What about a bread? And all this information is on the Canada's Food Guide, and this is the tricky thing about bread. Bread makes us fat, right? Manufacturers, they don't make a size that is on Canada's Food Guide, which is a 35-gram slice of bread. Most bread that you will get out there will be 45 grams. So it's like a slice and a half. So when you have yourself a sandwich, you're actually getting 3 slices of bread. So it's important to understand the serving sizes, because we live in a society where the manufacturers are overfeeding us. Okay? So when it comes to, and I'll pull it all together for you in a minute, but when you think about the grains, we need them. Don't eliminate them from your diet. Don't think that they're the ones that are causing you to gain weight, because they're not, unless you're overportioning them. And they tend to be the ones that we draw to, because they were the ones that keep us full and make us feel satisfied. Okay? What about the milk and alternates? What nutrients in there? Vitamin D, calcium. Those are the 2 big ones that you think of, right? There's magnesium and some zinc and all those kind of things that are in it, those other nutrients. But it's calcium and vitamin D that you think of the most when you think of the dairy products. What do those 2 do for us? Bones, that's always what we think about. Teeth. When you're out there and you're walking, your heart's beating, your muscles are moving, you need some calcium. Okay, it's in your extracellular fluids. So calcium goes beyond just what our bones. Our bones are kind of like our bank. If we're not getting it from the food, it's going to take it from the bones. So it's really important that you get some dairy products, or how I like to refer to them as milk equivalents, okay? Because there are a lot of people that have milk allergies or milk sensitivities, and we have so many products on the market right now that we can substitute in. So for example,
Can you taste it though?
yes. That's a really good point, and you're right. In terms of some of the soy, you really do have to try them. You have to try them, and you have to be open to trying other ones. So for example, for myself, with soy milk, I tried soy milk. The first one I tried, I didn't really care for. So I tried another one, and it took me like 3 or 4 different types of soy milk before I found one that I liked.
But soy's all fat.
Soy is all fat?
Yeah.
But, okay, so good point. Soy, all the soy milks aren't fat. You can get ones that are reduced fat, but we want the fat from the soy.
Pay for them too.
What?
You pay for them.
You do pay for them. Unfortunately, some right now.
For you is more expensive.
Well, it's not always that way, but the ones that are promoted for health, like with our, now you'll notice that the almonds and the soy milks, because they're more in relation to heart health, you will find that they will be at an added cost. You're absolutely right. But also, and I don't know if I have it here, but when you look at some of the soy products, they're also economical. So you can look at it from an expensive point of view, or you can look at it from an economical point of view, like your textured vegetable protein, very economical, cheap. You can put it on the shelf, you can bring it off and use it in your spaghetti sausage, you can use it in lasagna, in making hamburgers. And then you can also, your tofus, if you learn how to incorporate them, they can fit into your diet, and they're reasonably priced, and they're a complete protein, meaning that you're getting all the protein that you need. Yeah. So when I look to these ones, I'm just asking you to be more open-minded and understanding that maybe you'll find one, and you're right, maybe you won't. But if you don't, that's why it's really important to understand the nutrients that are in there, and maybe what you're going to do is you're going to supplement on top, okay? So if you're not getting enough calcium, and we do know that majority of Canadians are not getting enough, unless you're a fatty fish eater on a daily basis, you are not getting enough vitamin D. So we should all be taking between 8 to 1,000 international units of vitamin D, okay? Particularly if you can't get out there in the sun during the summer months, but from September to April for sure, you should be taking a vitamin D to make sure that you're getting the nutrients from that you need. So the calcium and vitamin D is what comes from the milk and the milk equivalents. That's the nutrients that come from them. That's why it's important that we include dairy products in our diet, okay, or dairy equivalents, milk equivalents. What about milk, meat, and alternatives? What are the nutrients that come from that? Iron, zinc, some protein. Again, your body's continually breaking down and rebuilding. So I'm hoping that most of you are active, or after you listen to my talk, that you'll be getting a little bit more active. And the iron is really important for helping transport that oxygen through the body as you get out there and you get a walk. And protein is really important as your body's breaking down and rebuilding. The thing about protein that I really want to stress is that as we age, we know people tend to move away from the protein type foods. It gets less and less, particularly if they're living alone. So know where your protein is in your food, which is primarily in the meat and alternates and in the dairy products, and including them with your meals, okay? So that you're ensuring that you're getting the adequate protein to keep a nice strong muscle mass, because muscle mass helps with your metabolism, right? So when we're looking at Canada's Food Guide to ensure that we're getting the nutrition you need. So if you're including foods from Canada's Food Guide, you're getting the nutrients. You know that by including 3 of the 4 food groups each time you fuel your body. How many of you here are eating regular meals on a daily basis?
What do you consider regular?
Every 4 to 6 hours. So would you maybe like eat at 8 o'clock in the morning and then not eat again until maybe 6 or 7 at night?
No, I'd have something during the day.
Something little?
Or,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
some pita bread.
So like a small little snack?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing is that a small little snack can be considered a meal if you're balancing it. So the way to think about it is regular meals, and again, everybody has a busy life, so don't think of it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Think of it more as when you wake up, within that hour you should be eating, that's your first meal. Then within 4 to 6 hours you should be eating again. Then what you're going to do is you're going to balance. And what I mean by that is you're choosing 3, if not 4 of the food groups. And I know we've done this before when I've spoken to you before, which is the aim is to think of your plate model. So when you're thinking of the plate, you want to cut it in half. Half of it should be your veggies, 1/4 of it should be your protein, and 1/4 of it should be your starch. All right? And then having some milk on the side, or a dairy product on the side. So if you do that, if you start balancing, and another thing that I've heard is, well, if I follow Canada's Food Guide, I gain weight. And if you're gaining weight following Canada's Food Guide, then the last one that I say that completes the triangle for me is the portions. Generally what happens is people start following Canada's Food Guide and they're gaining weight, what they do is they tend to take away things because they blame certain food groups, or they feel like they're eating too much. But instead of cutting back, they take away. The idea is to balance your plate, load up on the veggies, and by doing that, what you're doing is you're actually displacing your calories, okay? So it takes your body a long time to metabolize this food. At breakfast time, just to show you, for example, if you were to, my piece of bread is there. If you were just to have yourself a couple slices of toast, a tablespoon of margarine, some peanut butter, and maybe a tea or a coffee, how many calories do you think that works out to be?
Depends what kind of bread, what kind of peanut butter, how much sugar you put in your coffee.
Yeah, you're right. But on average, you can average it out within a few calories. You're right. It could be a little bit higher. It could be a little bit lower. But on average, we're looking at about 500 calories. All right. So then when I say to people, let's balance it up a little bit by what I say, which is 3 of the 4 food groups. Okay. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to balance it up by adding more food in. So you're going to add yourself your slice of toast, your peanut butter. You're going to take away the margarine. You're going to have yourself an apple, and you're going to put yourself a glass of milk there. Some people will say that looks like a lot of food. That's more food than what I have. How many calories?
Let's see.
Pretty close, but it's about 350 calories. But it will take your body longer to break this down than it will to break this down, the 2 slices of toast. Meaning that oftentimes what happens is people are hungry midway. So 2.5, 3 hours, they're feeling hungry. Soon as you are balancing, you are getting the protein, fat, and carbohydrates, which help level out the blood sugars and help to keep you full over a 4 to 6 hour period. Okay? Any questions with that?
Do you recommend this sort of breakfast or an oatmeal?
Well, we can look at it from an oatmeal perspective, okay? So again, if we take it to the oatmeal, if you're just a Cheerios or an oatmeal kind of person, and you're just eating that, and I said to you, okay, go by my theory, which is 3 of the 4 food groups, and what we're going to do is maybe add in a banana, a slice of bread, peanut butter, because we want some protein in there, and a glass of milk. What do you think? A lot of food? If you hear yourself say that it's too much, then somewhere a portion size is too big. So instead of, again, taking away, what you're going to do is you're going to just cut it down a little bit, okay? And maybe you go with half a slice of bread and some peanut butter on it. Do you see what I'm saying there? But why would you do that? Why would you bother balancing? What does it do for you? Besides keep you fuller longer.
It's not from snacking.
But snacking is okay. But it helps, but what it does is it can actually optimize the nutrition. What I mean is you're getting the nutrients that you need. Okay? Keeps the blood sugars leveled off.
The toast thing with margarine or butter, there's, you know, like, I noticed you say minus the margarine.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were using butter, it's obviously worse than margarine?
No, that was another question that was asked of me, which is the butter margarine idea. And the way that I explain it, because I also do cholesterol management here in endocrinology. So the way that I like to explain it to the people that I see is that when we look at a North American diet, the majority of the fat that we get is saturated fat, and that comes primarily from animal products, right? So saturated fats are going to come from your meats and your dairy. That's the majority of the fat. What we want to do is we want to balance it up. So when we talked about the soy milk, that's why when I talk to people, I like them to get the soy milk. I like them to get the fat from the soy milk so they can balance up that saturated fat with some of the polyunsaturated fat, okay? Because that's really what you want to do. You want to look at the overall fat, but you want to make sure you're getting a good balance of the types of fat, okay? So when we look at butter and margarine, people say to me, which one's better? It really is an individual thing that you have to look at, and you have to say, okay, where's the fat coming from in my diet? If the majority of fat is saturated fat, and if you're having trouble doing that, I don't mind sitting down with you and helping you do that. But if the majority of the fat is saturated, then I would recommend a margarine, only so that we could get a little bit more of the polyunsaturates in there. But you know, if your diet, if you're getting lots of the polys and you're not getting as much of the saturated fat and you like butter, I have no problem with you using. So that's the issue around that, is that people think that one thing is better than the other, and oftentimes it comes down to just an individual, what you're doing from your own diet perspective. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So when we talk about weight, and just to sum that up for you, when I talk about trying to achieve the habits, okay, so again, we're always talking about weight, but I'm trying to change the habits of people, which is regular meals. So when you're having, even when you have a snack, so if you were to have just some pita bread, an apple, and a yogurt, even though you only think it's a snack, it's like a meal. It's very well balanced, right? So it's halfway through. People feel like they have to sit down and they have to actually cook themselves up a meal in order for it to be considered a meal. And really all you want to think about it is that you're getting the fuel that you need to keep your body going. Okay? So when we talk about weight sneaking up on people, it's because oftentimes it's the portions, and it's just a matter of cutting it back a little bit. And the slide that I have here, you know, if you are able to cut back, and what I did here is not that I just took the margin away, because it takes a little bit away from the calories. So every teaspoon of margarine or butter, because it's fat, it's just different types of fat, you can say there's about 45 calories in it. Okay, so every teaspoon you add, it can add up quite quickly, can it? So by cutting that back, and if you're putting the peanut butter on there, you might not notice. So trying to find ways that you can cut back without maybe noticing. So if you're able to cut back just even 1 teaspoon out of your daily diet, there's 4 pounds in a year. 1 slice of bread, so again at breakfast, if you're having 2 or 3 slices of bread, cutting 1 slice of bread out of your diet can add up to 7 pounds a year. Juice, if you're a juice drinker, 1 cup, or if you're drinking, you know, the big glasses of juice, cutting it back to just 1 cup. You can save yourself 9 pounds. So what I'm trying to show you is that sometimes we don't realize our portions are increasing, and then our weight slowly increases as well. Okay? So that's the eating aspect of it again. And what I'm trying to get you to think about is, how does what I'm doing currently, how does that differ from what she's saying? And is there anything that I'm willing to give a try?